a school in Rochester, New York. Now, the thing is, when you hear New York, you think like New York is like New York City. Everything is New York City and big city lights and all of that. But I was going to Rochester, New York, which is a whole different place. So my dream of like meeting 50 Cent on the street just was never gonna happen, right? But I went there, and again, right, just more opportunities to build myself. I studied financial economics. I learned high finance. Lady that I went to high school with when I was in South Africa. And she noticed I was a little bit lonely, and she invited me to have dinner with her at Fordani and was asking me a whole bunch of questions, naturally. All of them centered around, well, why am I here, right? Why did I move here, and what was I trying to achieve? One of the questions she asked me that really sort of stuck with me is she asked me, what is my life's mission, right? And I was just like, wow, that's a deep question to ask on maybe a first date. But I thought about it, and I didn't know that I had the answer until I gave the answer. It just came so naturally. And I said, well, my life's mission is I just want to do whatever I can to help the homies, right? So what does it actually mean? Who are the homies, right? To me, the homies are young, talented African people of all creeds from anywhere on this continent, and using my influence to be able to create opportunities for them because I see myself in them. And I see myself in them because I realize that I am where I am because a lot of people create a lot of opportunities for me. I was born in Lusaka, Zambia, in 1993. I am the firstborn of my grandfather's 8th child. So you can say I'm really lucky to be alive because my grandmother was a G, pushed out 10 kids and raised them all. So that's where my life started. And Zambia is a very special place to me because it's one of the only places where I felt like I belonged, right? I understood the culture because it was my culture. The community around me, my family, my neighborhood, my school, all had an investment in me because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, right? They saw talent, they saw drive, and they poured into that, and they made me believe that I could be whatever I wanted to be, right? And help me succeed in whatever that I wanted to succeed in. And as a result, I excelled, right? I was on an upward trajectory. I was happy, I was joyful, I did well in school, I was growing, and then something happened that completely changed that, right? My father had the opportunity to move to South Africa and teach at a university there, down in a little town called Mthatha, population 100,000 people, which was a very big shift and a big change for me because it was the first time in my life that I was an immigrant, right? And I moved to a place that was hostile to me, a place that I didn't know the culture, I didn't know the people, I didn't look like the people, I didn't speak like them, I didn't act like them, And because I was so different, because I was so othered, right? The people around me, right? I moved from a place where people around me would pour into me to where people around me rejected me. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know how to deal with that shift. I didn't know how to deal with that pain. So I went into myself, right? I developed an attitude. I stopped doing well in school, which then made my relationship with my parents deteriorate. And then it also now became a self-fulfilling prophecy because everybody was around me was like, yeah, you see, look, these immigrant kids, they just come here and they mess things up, right? And, if I really look back at that time and if I'm really reflective, I see that I was depressed, right? But we didn't have the language at that time to say, depressed. What does an 8, 9-year-old have to do with being depressed? You just do what you're told, and you keep, moving on, right? And I felt like for that first 5 years when I was in South Africa, I felt like I was existing, right? Like watching your own life as a movie and not really living it. And the only moments of happiness I can remember during that period were when I would go back home and visit Zambia, and visit my family, and reconnect. That was the only time I can remember in that period of feeling any type of joy and any type of happiness. I don't know what changed, right? Maybe I can't really put my finger on it, but at some point during that period, I decided to, okay, accept that I was never going back to Zambia, right? And by making that acceptance, which was a hard thing to do, because in my mind I was like, okay, maybe next year, oh geez, maybe dad will get fired and we'll go back to Zambia, which is not a good thing to think, obviously, but you're a child, so you're only really thinking about yourself. You're not really thinking about the broader implications of everything. But once I accepted that I wasn't going back, I began to sort of grieve my home, and that grief then led to sort of a recovery of sorts, where I said, okay, this is where I'm at, right? How can I make the most of this place? Because I knew that I had it in me to make the most of where I was. So I began engaging with this environment that I thought was hostile to me. And I found that as I started engaging with it, right, it stopped being hostile with me. And when you're a young man, right, your main community obviously is going to be your school, right? You spend 90% of your time at school when you're a young man. So that's your community. Those are your people, your peers, your teachers. That's where you're at. And so I began really engaging there, and I realized, oh wow, I thoroughly enjoy people. I enjoy listening to people, talking to them, understanding what their ambitions are, what they want to do, who they are, who they want to be. And so as a result, I ended up in a position where I could talk and hang out with the sports guys, or the quote-unquote troublemakers, or the book-smart people, because, well, like, everybody's got a story, and everybody's story is interesting. At the same time, as you get older, sort of in the school system, you get to pick your own subjects, right? And this is where I discovered I had a passion for finance and business, right? Because all of a sudden I was taking all business subjects, and I started to excel again, right? Because it didn't feel like school, it just felt like common sense. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. You need capital to start a business, cool. It just seemed like something that was natural to me. And as a result, all of a sudden, all of these sort of teachers and people who say, well, this kid isn't going anywhere, started to see me differently, and see me as a person that maybe they could communicate with, who could then communicate with his peers, right? And so when these two things sort of came together, I found myself sort of being and taking on natural, both formal and informal leadership positions where I was, right? With my peers, I was the guy that they could talk to. I was the guy that listened to them. I was the guy that could take what they were experiencing and push it to the administration. The administration, I was the guy that, was like, oh yeah, you're the one with sense, or whatever that means, and I was able to have those conversations. South Africa is a very interesting place, because I don't know if this happens in Kenya, but it's probably one of the only places where like high school students can legitimately go on strike. You can just say, I don't want to go to school anymore because I feel like the administration is X, Y, and Z. And so we'd go on strike, and I'd have to be the guy that they send in to negotiate. And it was very, very, very weird, at that time. But again, I learned how to speak to people. I learned how to speak to people who are older than me, and engage. I was able to then also garner sort of the respect of my peers. I discovered through that period that I enjoyed teaching a lot, because again, right, there's one thing being good at the things that you're good at in school. It's another thing saying, okay, here are my guys, and they're not maybe as good. How do I help them, right? And how do I help them without making them feel like they don't know anything, because that's how a lot of people made them feel. It's like, yeah, well, you don't know anything. And I knew how that felt because that had been done to me. And so whenever I taught, whenever I was tutoring my peers or engaging with them, I did it in such a way that I hoped would help them grow and give them confidence. And throughout this process, I found joy, right? I found the kind of joy that I had lost from when I was in Zambia. And it sort of drove me and made me a better person than who I was, such that when the opportunity for me to apply and go to the African Leadership Academy happened, which is the school in South Africa that brings together young, talented Africans from all over the continent with the goal of, creating and developing the next generation of African leaders through practice and opportunity. When that opportunity came to make that application to see if I could be one of those people, I wrote it, and I realized that everything that I thought was impressive about me had nothing to do with me, because my entire application was about my peers, right? And how I had created a space for them to be the best versions of themselves. And luckily, however, I applied, I got into this school, and that thus became a next sort of stage of my life, right? And this stage of my life was a lot focused on building myself, building my skills and building who I was, because the unique thing about this school is that, like I said, it allowed you to practice. So I loved business, and the school itself had student-run businesses on campus. There was a bank, there was a place that sold regalia. It was just a little mini economy. And you had to do the formal things that you would have to do in real life to get a job, right? You'd have to interview. I went in there, interviewed. By the time I left, I had become the CEO of the bank. I had started a business with my peers. I'd learned how to ideate something, pitch it, and then implement it. And that level of practice for me was unparalleled, right? Because it helped me become the best version of myself as I grew. There were also opportunities to gain sort of exposure that I didn't know one could have at 17. I remember winning the opportunity to go to the World Economic Forum on Africa when I was 17. And I was here engaging with these titans of industry from across Africa. I had to network with them, talk to guys that had been doing this for 30 years, and just learn from them and sort of take all of that in. I remember there was this one man who was interesting. He was the CEO of the biggest bank in South Africa, and I had sent him an email saying, "Hey, my name is Ngosa. I'm a student. I want to be the CEO of your bank. Can I meet with you at the forum?" And he was like, "Sure, here's my secretary, let's set up a meeting at the forum." So we did. He set up that meeting, and then he had to change it, but my phone was off at the time. Now, I remember I was 17, so I had like what I thought was the coolest voicemail in the world, right? I was just like, it was something like, "Yo, I'm busy, leave your name and your number and I'll holler at you when I'm back," or maybe not. I remember that voicemail very distinctly. And then I saw a missed call from this guy, and I was just like, wow, okay. He probably heard that voicemail, and he's just like calling to like cancel our meeting completely. And anyway, no, he was calling to reschedule it, and we met. And then, I meet him, and he has this group of other bankers, like the 5 biggest banks in South Africa. These are like all my heroes at this point, because that's who I want to be. And the first thing he says to me is like, "Homie, I'm glad you hollered back." And I was just like, oh, gosh, I just wanted to crawl up and die, But, but we had an amazing conversation with those guys, and it helped me see myself in people. It helped me see what I could become. And when I think about it, see that type of exposure, right? I was able to access it because I went to this institution. However, this institution, only takes 200 students every year, right? But there's 500 million young Africans all over this world who could benefit from that type of exposure and that type of experience. And that's why I think, at least personally for me, the onus is on those who have been given opportunity to provide spaces and create spaces for opportunity to grow and breathe, right? And that's a lot of where my mission comes in, my mission in life. Fast forward, I went to university. That was another thing. I was able to go to achieve another one of my dreams because I wanted to go to the US ever since I could remember, and I got into a school in Rochester, New York. Now, the thing is, when you hear New York, you think like New York is like New York City. Everything is New York City and big city lights and all of that. But I was going to Rochester, New York, which is a whole different place. So my dream of like meeting 50 Cent on the street just was never gonna happen, right? But I went there, and again, right, just more opportunities to build myself. I studied financial economics. I learned high finance. I got my first formal job because I needed to work to support myself for the first time in my life. I engaged in the school, and all of that experience then allowed me to sort of get my first job out of school, which was, as far as I can tell, the best first job I could have possibly asked for, because I was working for Dalberg Capital, which is an impact investment firm. Now, an impact investment firm, simply put, the easiest way to say what we did is that we took really rich people's money and we invested it in growth businesses across Africa and East Asia. And the company was rather small, and the benefit and the wonderful things about working at small companies is even at your most junior level, you're given a lot of responsibility. Like, you start talking to people that you don't think you should be talking to, but they say, oh, we're gonna send an expert to analyze your business, expert that's like been out of school for 2 months. But you learn quickly, right? You learn quickly. You engage. I got to analyze and work with businesses from all across this continent, in different industries. I got to engage with managers who had different leadership styles, from service to a little bit more aggressive to inspirational, and all of this sort of just kept building me and my skills and my story, and it was wonderful. I'm not saying it wasn't, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But at some point over that time, I started to feel a little bit unhappy again. Started to feel the way that I had felt when I first moved to South Africa, and I didn't really understand why at the time, why I was feeling that way. And so ultimately, what I had realized was that I had spent all this time focused on me, and I hadn't really been at least I didn't feel like I had been of service to my peers in a really, really long time, right? And it's very difficult to do that from abroad, right? Because at this point in time, I was in London, which is nice on the 2 days when it's warm. And so I, when one of my eccentric clients, this Belgian guy who never stops talking, which is great, told me that he was gonna come to Mombasa and build a business. I called him and I said, hey, I don't know if you need some help, I'm here, right? And then he sent me a couple of texts over Facebook Messenger, and I was on a plane to Mombasa, talking to this girl who then somehow became my girlfriend. I don't know how, but probably got game, I hope. And so when I landed here at Close the Gap, we were 5 people. It was 4 Belgians and 1 Zambian. We had the basic structure of a business and a vision of what we wanted to be, where we are a co-working space, or where we are an ICT company, or we are an entrepreneurship company, or where we are investment company, or we're everything. So that we had that going, and what I saw when I came here was there was an opportunity to make this place an opportunity factory for people, right? Because it was so nascent, because it was so new, because it had It had, fortunately, the backing of people who had financial resources. I knew that at least wherever I had influence, right, I was going to use it to create, to create those opportunities. And so when I look around now and I see a company of 23 Kenyans from all across this country and an ecosystem that is bigger than that, I'm like, I think we did create those opportunities. You know, when I come here and I look at this particular event or I look at the co-working space, you know, I see my colleague Jacinta, who is the office manager here and has never managed an office before. But I see her coming to me and telling me, Ngosa, we have an amazing space here, right? But we never optimize it. We don't have clients for X what reason. This is what I think we can do to get this place to capacity, right? And I said, okay, cool. Let's sit down, let's strategize, and let's do it. And we did, and we implemented it, and we moved from a co-working and event space that had no clients to one that is now brimming with people and at full capacity. And that was a lot to do with her, right, as it was with me and the opportunities that I helped her create, right? When I think about what we have in Jomvu, the refurbishing center and the ICT factory, I see Norman and Peter, right, who are like these young guns from Nairobi, 24, 25-year-olds. I met them in like really difficult circumstances initially, developed a relationship with them. I knew that they loved IT, right? They had Timothy, who was a mentor for them, and together they built, right, probably the best IT disposition factory in all of East Africa, or Africa in my opinion. And they run it, right, by themselves. In fact, they couldn't make it here because they're still running it, you know. I think I look at the businesses that are around here, you know, and the businesses that we've worked with and invested in, you know, such as Sensoko, you know, who wants to be the best on the number one online marketplace in Africa. And I see where they started in their beta version, right? And I see where they are now because they've had opportunities and had resources because we've worked with them, right? I think they have a damn good chance of being the number one marketplace in Africa one day. And so if there's anything that I'd like you to take away from whatever I've said today, you know, is figure out what's your mission in life. Let that drive you and build for it, you know, because I always say if you build it, they will come. Who is they? I don't know, but they will come. Thank you.